Hey there, I'm Lance and I'm a gamer.
And I'm Sam and I'm a non-gamer.
And we are Love to Hate, where we try to help gamers find great games to play with non-gamers.
And today we're taking a look at Biblios Quill and Parchment by Dr. Finn's Games.
Probably familiar with the classic game Biblios. Well, in 2021, Dr. Finn's Games released Biblios Quill and Parchment, which is a roll and write version of Biblios. And in this game, you are going to be rolling dice and writing on boards in different areas of your boards, trying to get the most points after two halves of the game. That's right, this game plays two different halves. Let me explain it to you down below, and then we'll come back and share our thoughts on it as a gamer and non-gamer.
All right, here's Biblios Quill and Parchment. Let me show you guys how this roll and write version of Biblios works. In this game, you are going to have several dice of different types. You are going to have some that are going to be on this main board, but the rest are going to be rolled by the players. You're going to make sure that each player has 2 of the white dice, 1 of the black dice, and 3 of the book dice here. And how this is going to work, all players are also going to have a player board that has a certain shape on the side here. The A side is the side that you're going to play for learning the game and beginning the game. Once you have mastered it, there is a B side that you can learn and find out about. I'm going to show you guys how this game plays using the A side here. Whatever shape you have here, mine's a triangle, you're going to write those shapes in the first row in the chapel here, and players are going to try to progress down this track to get to the front of the chapel. We'll cover that here in just a second. How a turn works in this game, all players are simultaneously going to roll their 6 dice and you are going to decide what you want to do with the dice that you have. All players are going to, with a hand underneath the table, on the count of 3, they're going to bring out a hand, and if you have an open palm like this, that means you want to re-roll all of your dice. If you have a closed fist, that means that you don't want to re-roll anything. You're good with what you have. And if you point to one specific die, that means you want to re-roll only that die. You get to roll your dice up to 3 times, meaning I can re-roll my dice on the first time, then I can point to a specific die on the second time, and then with whatever comes up that time, that's what I'm stuck with. So it's kind of like Yahtzee a little bit there. And whatever you end up with, this is what you're going to do. So your 2 white dice, you're going to add the 2 numbers together. This is your influence. You want to try to build up as much influence as you can in the first half of this game. So in this case, I have 11, and I would write 11 in box 1 here because this is the first round. And you can see here that in round 1, I'm going to add whatever I get in round 2, and I'll put it in this octagon or hexagon, excuse me. And then whatever I get in round 3, I'm going to add it to that box to put there, and I will add it whatever I get in round 4 to put in that box. Now in the second half of the game, rounds 5, 6, 7, and 8, I'm going to be subtracting the influence. So you build up your influence in the first half of the game and you spend it in the second half. We'll come back to how that works here in a second. The rest of the dice that I have, the story dice, I'm going to advance along these tracks for every die that I got. So in the purple or the pink one, excuse me, I would just mark off a pink one, and then I got 2 blues, so I would mark off 2 blues. Now, if you'll look closely here, there are certain spots that say negative something or another. This one said -3, -2, -2, -1, -1. If I don't reach these negative spots by the end of the game for each one, that's how many points I'm going to lose. So I definitely want to try to get to at least these spots. What I really want to do, though, is be the person who has the most in each of these tracks, because that's going to determine how many points I get to score for these tracks. I get to multiply it by 3 if I'm the person who has the most, or 2, or 1, or half if I have the fewest. If I can get all the way to the top, though, I can circle these numbers up here, depending on how far I make it up there, and that's pretty nice. Now, this die right here, this black die, is going to determine what I am able to do with my novice. For every novice that you have on here, you are going to circle or fill in a bubble where your novice starts and move him along the pathway here. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to earn bonuses, as seeing right here. That's going to allow me to mark off one of these gray books right here, knowledge. If I get to this part right here, I get to roll a die and take whatever I get on the die. If I can get to a town, that's going to give me points. If I only get to one town, I'll get 2. If I can get to 2 towns, I'll get 5 points. If I get all 3 towns by the end of the game, I'll get 10 points. And you can see that you can go different paths. I could go this way, which is a shorter path to get to this town, or I can go this way, which is longer, but it does give me more benefits. So you choose which path your novice is going to take. Now, if at any time you roll something that you're not able to use, you have 2 choices. You can do a good deed, filling in one of these bubbles on this cross here, which is going to give you 2 points for every bubble that you have. Or you can move your novice. If you can't do either or because you filled in all the bubbles, you've moved your novice all the spots, then tough luck. You can't use those dice. Now, at the end of the 4th turn, you are going to do something completely different. You are going to fill up these rows for however many players. So if you have 2 players, you're going to fill up the top 2. If you have 3, you'll fill in the top 3. 4, you'll fill in the top 4. And you're going to be putting story dice, so that's these kind of dice, on the lighter spaces, and you will be using the black dice to fill in the darker spaces. Now, how this is going to work, players are going to have built up their influence through the first 4 rounds of the game. So let's just say that I happen to have 32 influence at the end of round 4, and that would actually go right here. And using my influence, I'm going to bid a certain amount to determine who gets what order of dice. So I might bid, let's say, 8. And I would write that number right here. And so I'm going to be subtracting 8 from 32. Depending on who bids the most, they will get the top pick here, or any pick actually. And what you are going to be doing with these dice, you will gain the books, you'll gain the travel die to move your novice, and then if you take this top row, you will get this purple die right here. What this is going to do is it's going to allow you to change the value of the books. Now, if you'll see here at the beginning of the game, it's always this order. The blue books are going to be worth 4 points, gray and pink are worth 3, and green and red are going to be worth 2. And that's going to determine how many points you get for your different tracks here, depending on if you finish first, second, third, or last. You will multiply that value with whatever value is on the die up here. So you really want to try to beef up the ones that you're progressing well on and lower the ones that the other players are progressing well on and that you're not, using this influence die here. And you can see that it's got pluses and minuses on it. You can add one to a die. You can add one to a die and take one away from another die. You could do that to the same die if you wanted to. You get the idea with how that works. So what you can do here, if you take the second row, is you're going to roll all these dice, and if there's a book die that you don't want, you can disregard it to move forward on this chapel track. I didn't mention this earlier, but on all of these book dice, there is a chapel icon on them, and for every icon that you get when you roll these dice, it allows you to move forward on the chapel track, earning points at the end of the game for however far you advance. And if you get a question mark on a row, then you get to roll one of these dice and gain whatever's on it. If you take from the third row, then you are going to get to add 1 to whatever you roll on your novice movement die. If you take from the bottom row, you get to re-roll one of the dice that comes up as your storybook dice. Last thing real quick, I forgot to mention on this novice die, there is a side that has a star on it. Not only do you get to move your novice 1 space on this path track here, but with the star, you will also get to cross off one of these stars right here, which will give you a free book on the corresponding track. The reason for the star, you cross it off. You can only do this 1 time for each track per game. At the end of the game, after 8 rounds, players are going to add up their points. You are going to get 1 point for every 4 influence that you have left over. So that's why you don't want to spend all of your influence, because it's 1 point for every 4 that you have. You're going to get 2 points for every mark on the cross here. And as I've already mentioned, you'll get 2, 5, or 10 points depending on how many towns you venture with your novice. You are also going to get the points from all of the different progressions that you've made on these tracks over here. Again, taking into account how much you get to multiply these dice with. And then you'll also get points for advancing along this track. Whoever has the most points is the winner. There is a more advanced variant if you want to play. When it comes to the end of each round, players are going to bid influence whether they want to take the top card of this deck. Here's an example. You get to roll this die. Players will bid in player order. Starting with the first player, they'll say how much they want to bid. Could be 0, could be 10 influence. Then one at a time, each player will say, yeah, I'm going to bid 11 influence. Whoever ends up bidding the most gets to take the card. Pretty simple, a little module that you can add to the game there. Let's go ahead and take a look at the box insert. And as you can see, you just get a paper insert with this one that you are going to put the bagged components into. In the bottom, the dice and the markers. The boards are going to go on top of that. And of course, you're going to have the rule book on top of that. Works great. And there you have it. That is Biblios Quill and Parchment. Let's go back up top and share our thoughts on this one.
And we're back, and now we're going to share our thoughts on Biblios Quill and Parchment from a gamer and non-gamer's perspective. So Sam, you and I have played Biblios before. It's been a very, very long time. It was pre-Love to Hate when we played Biblios.
So like 1 million games ago.
But it was one that both of us really enjoyed. It was a solid game, one that I very much enjoyed. It's one that has been around for a very long time, been very successful, and now you have this roll and write version of it. Tell me what your first impression was of this game.
I think, and Lance knows this, roll and writes are a hard sell for me. They're not my favorite kind. And honestly, I think that they can be very deterring for non-gamers just because you're having to play a bigger role.
Okay.
That's, in your playing.
Okay.
That makes sense. You're
a little bit of extra responsibility in development of your strategy and getting points, I guess, is kind of what you're trying to say.
Yeah, if that makes any sense at all. I just feel like it's adding something that a lot of non-gamers, somebody that's just not familiar with these types of games, maybe would not enjoy. So just putting that out there was already a hard sell.
Okay, all right.
I also noticed that I had to do math. So
a little bit. I mean, you are adding some numbers, and then in the second half of the game, you're subtracting numbers. So yes, there is a little bit of math.
But overall, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of colors. I really like the dice. The dice had a lot going for them. It's a good setup, but it seemed a little overwhelming.
Yeah, and I will agree with that. To be honest, this was more rules heavy than what I was expecting. Just knowing Biblios, the original game, was a very simple game to understand. It wasn't so simple that it was boring. It's a very fantastic game. Going into this game, having that in the back of my mind, I kind of just assumed, and that's not a good thing to do, but that this game would be of a similar ilk as far as rules as Biblios, and it's a little bit more dense. It's a little heavier. And so I had to read the rule book a time or two to completely understand what was happening in this game. So Sam is right that this isn't as intuitive or straightforward as Biblios, the original game. Now I'm going to stop comparing it to that game. I'm just going to talk about this game going forward. And you have the different sections of where you're going to be using your dice. You have the numbers that you're going to be adding together each turn. You're trying to progress on the different tracks for the different types of books. There's 5 different books, 5 different colors: the blue, the gray, the pink, the green, and the red. And I'm sure all of those mean something, but as far as I'm concerned, they're just colors. And then you're also trying to advance in the chapel, trying to be the first one to the very top. So there's different things that are going on about this game. For you as a non-gamer, Sam, when you have differing tracks that you're trying to advance on, and you need to use dice to do something over here, but you don't want to forget this spot over here. Talk about that, what that's like for you.
I've played a couple of games that have done that, and the biggest problem I would say is it feels disconnected.
Okay.
I did not feel like in this game that each section really made sense with the others. There are some games that can do that, but I think that's the hardest part when you have a game that's causing you to split your focus.
Okay.
Is how do those areas flow together? And a lot of times they don't, at least for a non-gamer, at least in the simplest form. Maybe, a little bit more complex, you can see that. But as a non-gamer, it's not my favorite thing.
Yeah, and for me as a gamer, track progression is a mechanic that I really do enjoy. It causes me to have to really split my thinking, if that makes sense, and put my focus in multiple areas and not neglect one thing because I'm so poured into one other area. That's something that I enjoy, but I can understand for somebody who's not, an experienced gamer or somebody who enjoys that aspect of thinking, that can be strenuous.
It's kind of like learning two games in one.
Okay, yeah.
So I don't feel like I can do well in one area. I can't do well in the game in general because I'm having to focus on two different areas.
That makes sense. That does make sense. Now for this game and what is going on with it and my experience that I had with it, there were several things that I really did enjoy. I enjoyed the aspect of having to build up my influence, trying to gain that using the best numbers that I could. I enjoyed the Yahtzee rolling kind of element to the game and deciding, I want to re-roll everything, or no, I'm done, or I just want to re-roll this one die here. I enjoyed that aspect. I thought that was pretty unique. I've not quite seen it done that way in other games. And then to use that influence in the second half of the game to bid for your sets of dice that you're using, I thought that was interesting as well, because you're essentially bidding victory points, a fourth of a victory point. But still, it's points at the end of the game if you don't spend them. And so I thought that was an interesting aspect. I will agree with Sam that when you get the dice, advancing on the different tracks was a bit disconnected, disjointed a little bit. I didn't quite feel the theme come through with it. So many roll and writes feel themeless. So it is kind of hard to really kind of make a theme pour out of a roll and write experience. And with this one, I just didn't really get the sense that the theme really came through. That being said, I still enjoyed the overall experience, even if it was a little bit disconnected from the theme. That makes sense. So let's get into pros and cons on this one. Sam, what were the things that you did like about this game?
It's a pretty game. I really like the dice. I'm looking at the back here.
And the back is a good picture of what the game is like. I mean, you've seen the overview, and so you'll see the pictures of it. But yeah, it's a really nice looking game.
Yeah, and it's a small footprint. It would be easy to take places, and so I think there are some benefits to it for sure. But in general, I felt that this game was a little much for a non-gamer.
Okay.
Just a little advanced and a little disconnected with the different gameplay halves.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, there you have it. And so let's get into our scores on this. So scale of 1 to 10. I'll go first. I do think that I probably enjoyed this game more than you did. I do think it's probably geared more for gamers than it is non-gamers. I don't think that I like it as much as Biblios. I said I wasn't going to compare it to that game anymore. I lied one more time. I think between the two, I would rather play Biblios just because it's something that's kind of ingrained in me at this point, whereas this is new, and not that new games can't be great. They can. I think I would just rather gravitate to what I know versus having to try to teach this one and incorporate this one into my gaming circles. Now, in a vacuum, if I'd never played that and I've only played this is still a great game. There's still lots of things about this game that I enjoy. As it is, though, I'm probably going to give it about a 6.9 is where I fall on it. So how about you, Sam? Scale of 1 to 10.
I'm definitely going in hardcore as a non-gamer for this game. As a non-gamer, I feel like I would rate it quite low, probably like a 5.6.
Okay. And I think that's fair given that, it is probably a little bit more rules heavy and probably geared for more gamers than non-gamers.
Yeah.
So I think that's fair. So, all right. Well, there you go. That's our thoughts on Biblios Quill and Parchment from Dr. Finn's Games. Go check it out.
Make sure to like and subscribe and push that bell button so you get notifications of all our new content.
I'm Lance.
I'm Sam.
And we are Love to Hate, where we try to bridge the gap between gamers and non-gamers. We'll catch you next time.